All right, go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to International GIS Day 2021 here at University of Michigan-Flint. My name is Troy Rosencrants. I'm the GIS and Data Manager in the Office of Economic Development here at the university. And this is a webinar we'll be discussing how data and GIS can help support your business or businesses in general in your area. A couple housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded so that you're able to view it later on or share it. We'll upload it to YouTube, share it on our website, and that sort of thing. Throughout, you can type any questions or comments you might have within the Q&A box. We'll try to keep an eye on that, and we'll have a dedicated time at the end for that. Well, there'll also be a post-event survey that'll go out with kind of a wrap-up email either later today or tomorrow, but I'll also share that right now in the chat so that you're able to fill that out. And if you fill that out, you'll be entered in a drawing. Esri's gracious enough to provide us 5 free 1-year ArcGIS subscriptions for personal use, which is a $100 value. With that, you get the full suite of options with the desktop software, ArcGIS Online access, ArcGIS Pro, and other desktop software. So you kind of get the ability to use it, get used to it. If you're a novice user or if you're a more advanced user, you can kind of use it to put on your computer to do other mapping that you might be interested in. But if you fill the survey out with this webinar and the afternoon webinar that we have, we'll be randomly selecting 5 people from that group to receive the subscription, and then you'll be looking for an email from me afterwards to get the instructions on how to redeem it. With that, I just want to make sure you're aware. Obviously, you signed up within the same registration form, but if you want to, we have the webinar this afternoon about leveraging GIS and data and placemaking with Christina Irwin, Damon Ross, and Joe Shapani speaking to those. Mostly about the Flint Public Art Project, but about some other projects going on within Genesee County. So if you decide you aren't registered for that, but you'd like to register, the registration form is the same thing. go.umflint.edu/GIS day. It'll be available up until 2 o'clock when it starts. So today, myself, Nic Custer, the Innovation Services Manager within our Office of Economic Development at the university, and Sue Peters, Vice President of Community Impact at the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. We'll all kind of be discussing, Nic will discuss kind of his end of how he uses data, or how he works with clients to understand what data they need when building a business plan and that sort of thing. I'll go into what data resources are available, especially from just a data piece to also with the GIS aspect. And kind of step through those different resources, how you might use them, how you might search for them, or search within them. And then if we have time, I'll give an example use case of using GIS to understand the landscape that you're looking at. And then Sue will treasure us with some ideas that she might have going forward of kind of from her perspective in grant making or working with business owners or business entrepreneurs and working with people in the community with this data and using GIS for it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nic to discuss his end of things.
Thank you, Troy, and good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Nic Custer. I'm the Innovation Services Manager here at the University of Michigan-Flint's Office of Economic Development. My role is primarily working with early stage and established businesses and nonprofits here in the campus and community. And where I see these intersections of data as being particularly important is really at that kind of market research piece or at that identification stage for the business. Now, this can be at any part of the business cycle. If we're thinking about those pre-startup, startup ideas, often really the biggest impetus for them is understanding who are they targeting, for a business plan or looking for loans. As they get a little further into that development of the organization, they're often looking for a site selection process. So something in which they can say, we want a brick and mortar retail location here, or we want headquarters and offices or a workforce in this area, because we feel it's going to be most advantageous to the growth and sustainability of our business. And even those that are already in established positions, those have been in business for multiple years, that know their market, that know their customer base, they still may be able to benefit from GIS. If you think about a competitive advantage analysis, as an example, really understanding where are our competitors positioned, where are those indirect competitors or substitutes positioned, and how can we make sure that we have the best reach of our existing customers and the ability to suss out those folks that are maybe looking for an alternative to their already established retail kind of location. And so again, there's a million ways we could think about the use of GIS in business, and there's many ways in which banks and other organizations use GIS on a consistent basis in order to understand who to best give money towards. I think specifically about Community Reinvestment Act, which kind of forces banks to give loans to underserved areas and populations. And a lot of this information that they use to define those areas or to define that giving comes from the kind of GIS sources that Troy is going to talk about today. If we can go to the next slide. I just want to give kind of a quick example of how GIS could be really important in that process for developing your business. And so all of us can imagine maybe for a moment that we have a new business concept and we're really excited to take this product or service into the marketplace. But the first and most important piece of all this is understanding who that customer is. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can think about this. And I like to use an example from a former faculty member here at UM-Flint, Amy Greshik. And her example was making dinner. And so if you think about it, there's two ways that we can go about this process. There's one in which we can kind of come up with a recipe and say that we think we're going to need all of these ingredients in order to move forward, or all of these characteristics of a customer. And then we go out and we find those characteristics. We find those ideal customers, and that's how we determine how to reach them at our marketplace. We can use GIS obviously for that and a variety of data sources, everything from demographic information to, again, competitive analysis and these different layers. On top of that, we could kind of go in a different direction, or complementing that, we could even say, what are the desired conditions? So specifically, we could say, are there incentives there? Is there a friendly government regulation? Are there different other incentives that we could find, or different advantages such as traffic flows and counts that'd be useful to the growth of our business? So this is kind of thinking about, first and foremost, who is a customer that we want? What do they really need? And how do we connect with them? And then you can look at the other side of it, kind of to these desired conditions, and to say, I have this product, I'm already serving this type of customer, I'm already looking for these types of conditions in the marketplace. How do I go out and find them? And so kind of all of that to say, there's a lot of value that we can take from this GIS process. We can use it to put multiple layers and really find that key niche market that we've identified, or again, to put these layers together and say, this is probably the best location for us, or the best type of person. So again, when we think about this, it's really important that a lot of the information from GIS is going to be in regards to these conditions in the environment and the market itself, whether that's competitors, available traffic, other population density and factors that are vital to the success of our business over the long run, or other demographic information that we can use that exists already from the US Census and other sources in order to really key in on that customer that we want to serve. What is our geographic range potentially for this business? What is the income range that we're trying to serve? And does the actual geographic location support that interest? Is there an age range that we're seeking out? Is there a gender target? There's a variety of demographic pieces that we could find using this GIS information. The one thing that we probably can't do is find those psychographic characteristics. And those are the things that are shared traits kind of across these demographic lines. And so if you can go to the next slide, I'll give you a quick example of some of this information I'm talking about. So let's say I have a business I'd like to start, a cafe here in Genesee County somewhere, and there's certain things I know I need based on best practices or my own expertise in order to survive. So I want to find a location that has at least 30,000 cars driving by each day. I want something that has around it some complementary businesses. Let's say I'm doing a cafe Maybe I would like bookstores. Maybe I would like more walkable retail because I think that'll increase my business prospects. Maybe one of those things that I need to make sure I have is access to high-speed internet. And those are, again, available information layers that we could add into that GIS process. Lastly, again, maybe there's incentives available, and I want to make sure that I'm within a geographic range that I can tap into some of those incentives. Opportunity zones are a great example of that over the past few years, which again kind of target certain underserved or under-resourced areas for potential investment and gives tax incentives to do so. But again, I could put all these factors together and say that I have a very interesting investment prospect, that I have a business that's likely to be very successful and viable in its location, and that what I really need to do is put all these factors together and find a place within this area. Additionally, again, you can think about if you're already existing in an area, or if you're trying to decide whether you would like to site a business in that location, is figuring out who are my direct competitors. So for our cafe, direct competitors are those that serve the exact same or very similar products. So I'm looking for coffee shops, I'm looking for tea houses, I'm looking for places that are going to kind of take that same retail dollar. But I may also want to know about indirect businesses. Who are those substitutes for my cafe, right? Who are those folks that also provide those vital services or those vital pieces that I think are so important? Maybe they're places like a library or a bookstore that provide the internet, that provide the seating space and community-centric nature that I'm looking for, but again, may or may not serve coffee. The other piece of this, again, is kind of thinking about that ideal customer. Specifically, I have a business. I have a lot of assumptions when I start this business based on, again, my thoughts, based on experience, based on market research. And I want at the very least try to validate many of these things or kind of throw them out if they're not going to fit with the reality of the situation. And so if I have a desired customer profile, let's say someone that lives within Genesee County with a median income range of $15,000 to $45,000, somewhere early to mid adulthood, male or female, I can again kind of look at available data sources and determine, is Genesee County going to support this in the first place? Is there a big enough population of folks that are not already being served by these competitors that could benefit from me putting my retail location here in the community? Above and beyond that, I can also kind of reverse engineer this stuff, and I can say, okay, I know that this is generally what I need. How do I find the community that best serves my interests within Genesee County? How do I understand where the need is greatest and where I have the most profit potential? And so again, we can kind of go forwards and backwards through this process, but either way, I think GIS is an important piece that's going to continue to support and enhance this market research piece. A last thing I just want to speak to again is those psychographics, again, those traits. They go above and beyond demographics and are much more harder to determine through a GIS layer. Not everything can be found this way. And so if we think about people that are ideal for my cafe or the niche I fill, perhaps again, they're looking for that third space, that place that's not work, it's not home, but that they can get stuff done. They want extremely premium products. They want fresh baked goods. Maybe I have a theme. It's college sports themes, U of M, MSU. Again, I might be able to find some of that information. But ultimately, I think the GIS is best served to fill in those other gaps. And then we can kind of from there figure out what are the elements, whether that's marketing, whether that's, again, decor, or the way in which we approach people and brand that fill those other traits and psychographic characteristics. So I'm going to pass it back to Troy, and I look forward to hearing you guys' questions on the ways in which data and GIS can be used to support your business.
Thanks, Nick. So with GIS and different resources, it's tough to understand what might be out there for you. And there's one big issue with data in terms of data availability, especially at what geographic boundary that you're looking at. And I'll get to that more into that in a second. But in general, data that's available, the big one is census. You heard Nick kind of mention that a couple different times. And there's a big difference between what's available via the census and maybe how good of data that it might actually be. We just went through our Census 2020 process, and so we just had the redistricting data come out for the 2020 census, or decennial census. And that just gets you a count of who's there, number of people, number of households, vacancy rates. what age groups they might be in, and what race characteristics that consumer might be. So it doesn't get into any, especially sort of the income, poverty rates, that sort of thing. So you have to supplement the decennial census data with other forms of data. And the American Community Survey, or the ACS data, is kind of the best option for that, especially between those decennial census. So the American Community Survey puts out a product. They send out a survey every single year, and they put out 1-year summaries. They put out 5-year summaries. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, the 2020 survey, so that it'd be for the 2020 1-year summary file, they're not going to actually give out because they weren't able to get enough survey responses to be comfortable giving that out as a final product. So the ACS is only good so far, and I'll kind of explain why in a second as well. Another source is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I'll go over a resource that the state of Michigan has for all Michigan resources as well. But BLS gives you kind of a national perspective, or a county perspective, or a state perspective, if you're looking outside of Michigan, especially. Then there's also county business patterns data. And then there's the Center for Economic Studies data, which is underneath our Census Bureau. And there's two main ones. There's the Business Dynamic Statistics, the BDS information. And then there's also LEHD, or loads data, which kind of looks at longitudinal employer household data. And that looks a lot of where people live versus where their work, and vice versa, and kind of where that travel might be occurring in terms of attracting potential employees, or understanding where employers are located. So just to kind of go brief overview, if you're not sure, for geographic boundaries, there's kind of a hierarchy, which is, you can see in the image on the right. For decennial, the smallest you get down to is the census block level, which I like to say, for example, in an urban area or in a city, for the most part, it's each city block. So it's kind of delineated by the street network, and then also delineated by any natural features such as a river that might flow through, or even a creek or a smaller lake. The ACS, the smallest, is only the block group. And again, that's because it's a survey that goes out. Not everybody fills it out. They don't send it to every single person. You don't always get it every single year in your mailbox. So they're trying to take survey data and extrapolate out. To extrapolate to a block level is pretty much impossible when you don't get any responses within that block. But for the ACS and for the decennial, there are these margins of error. So even with the decennial data, like with the most recent, they've done differential privacy, which has basically made the estimates within each block not exact. Where you might have households that might say there's 4 households, but then there's 0 population, or vice versa, where there's 20 people in that block, but they say there's 0 households. And so they try to make it so a person can't be identified through the data. So census tract level is usually the one that's used the most for a variety of different data sources. And that's usually the smallest that a lot of researchers and other data analysts kind of try to use to get the most relevant data, or most accurate data, at the smallest geographic boundary. Other economic data that I just kind of discussed is mostly, a lot of it's just at the county level, and sometimes at the city or township level, which can be an issue, or provide difficulty, especially when you're only looking within a small community, small township, that you might not be able to get data for just that area. But usually the lowest is the census tract information. You might be able to find something out there that's a little bit smaller, but again, it's very rare in terms of finding it that small. And the bottom right kind of gives you an idea of, when you look for a county, then you can look at a minor civil division, or MCD, which basically amounts to kind of a city and or a township. Then within that place or city, you can have multiple tracts or block groups, and then blocks, and they're all kind of grouped together to then create the level above, for example. So census blocks are all within a census block group. census block groups are all within a census tract. And then census tracts are all within a county. There's no crossing of boundaries with those. Now, for example, on the ones on the left in the top image, you see voting districts, you see county subdivisions, you see zip codes are also part of that, where they will cross county boundaries, they will cross tract boundaries, which can cause issues when you're trying to compare regions or even compare years. So with all that, we have all that spreadsheet data, and again, just for those that aren't super familiar with GIS as a whole, GIS can stand for Geographic Information Systems or Geographic Information Science. Systems is kind of the actual doing GIS, so the hardware, the software, that sort of thing, and the science is what you would learn maybe in a textbook or in a class that you might be taking, or the kind of the theory behind the actual practice of it. But basically it allows us to take a variety of different layers, kind of visualize there in the top right, and put them all over top of each other to represent the real world. It allows relationships, patterns, trends to kind of be visualized that you can't see within spreadsheet data or on a chart or on a graph. So I always say it's what is where when. There's a subject, a place, and a time. What are we looking at? Where is it spatially located? And where is that time? Is it now? Is it in the future? Is it in the past? So we kind of get all three of those aspects of GIS data. And so with those business industries specifically that we're talking about today, a variety use GIS for a variety of different aspects of business. So for example, with real estate, they want to understand the market especially for developers to understand, do I need to, or is it viable to produce a subdivision in this region, or build a industrial complex or a commercial building or whatever it might be. There's also user interfaces such as Zillow or Realtor.com that use GIS to help consumers find houses or sell houses residentially or commercially. And then, for example, I'll go over the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, has a very, very good site selector tool that I'll show you here in a little bit to help with both developers and even resident, not necessarily residential, but especially commercial people that are looking for available space or sites. Insurance uses GIS all the time to map policy locations where they have policies held by different consumers, especially with risk exposure, hazard, insurance, looking at flood risk, tornado risk, hurricane risk. So insurance uses GIS all the time. Retail, which I'll go to a little bit more here in a second. Obviously, Nick described a lot of what those bullet points are. And that retail also works with logistics, distribution networks, understanding traffic, understanding potential impedance on my supply chain that we've all had issues with recently, especially. Financial services, understanding branch and ATM networks and optimizing those to make sure we're placing ATMs or branch locations in optimal locations to get as many consumers as they possibly can. And then also in their loan making, understanding how resilient a business might be in a particular region. They use GIS to understand that. And then manufacturing, understand marketing and understand, again, that supply chain aspect. So, for the most part, we're focusing on retail today in terms of data, resources, and if somebody's wanting to try to start selling a product in a particular region, understand what aspects of data and GIS they might be able to use or need to understand. So with retail and GIS, there's kind of four main aspects. And the first is customer engagement, understanding who your customer might be, who the consumers are, what you might want, like Nick described, and then using GIS to find out where those people are. And one thing that Esri has that I'll show you is called tapestry segmentation. And it's a very interesting data source that I'll go more into detail when I show you on the map here in a second. But basically it groups people into about 24, I think, different categories based on income, based on age, based on race, based on population densities. and a variety of other aspects of life to kind of say who is that customer, what they might be more interested in, and that sort of thing. Then site suitability, obviously trying to find a location to place your business. Or if you have a business that's trying to expand, where should I expand to? And kind of understanding what your service area might be. Are we looking at people that are just walking by in a downtown area, or are we looking in an area where people are going to be driving to your location, most likely? Then there's obviously market research and planning, understanding what the market potential is versus what consumer spending already is. Is there a surplus? Is there a demand for it? Is there leakage in terms of, are people going outside of that region to find that particular business? And then obviously supply chain logistics, making sure you're getting your product in a timely fashion so that you can then get it out. Not only in terms of into your business of people to come into your brick and mortar to purchase that, but also, especially in the past 18 months to a year, 2 years almost, home delivery, sending those people out to deliver to homes your product, and understanding routing and making sure that you're being as efficient as possible. And GIS really can help with that as well. So again, a lot of those variety of different resources. We have the census data. For GIS census data, I personally use the nhgis.org, which is the National Historical Geographic Information System, housed at the University of Minnesota Population Center. It's also housed within IPUMS, if you've heard of that, IPUMS. It's the same people that they kind of do all of those data sets as well, but they have a very easy system to use, which the census data has gotten better in terms of downloading it and being able to map, and I'll kind of show you that with the data.census.gov site. BLS is just bls.gov. The Michigan labor data is MILME, is what I kind of call it. I don't know if that's how everybody does, but milmi.org. I'll show you that as well. But basically, they take the BLS data and provide it just for Michigan right away for you in a variety of different tables and interactive charts. So you can kind of pull that data very easily. Center for Economic Studies, I'll show you both of their resources, BDS and On the Map. Then I'll briefly show you a couple other resources, Stats America, which is housed at the University of Purdue, or Purdue University, at their University Center for Economic Development, and Social Explorer is another one. Social Explorer, you can get some free resources with in terms of mapping, but also in gathering data, but also they have some added value in terms of purchase subscriptions and that sort of thing as well. And then I'll briefly show you the MEDC site selector tool. And after all kind of demonstrating these, then I will get into kind of that example use case. So let me get out of. So first, the tapestry segmentation data that we'll be showing. It's for the entire United States. So I'll zoom up into Michigan. For example, with this map, they have all this data at county level, and zoom a little farther, zip code, census tract, and then even farther, you can get to the census block group level. And with all of these, you can see how, at the county level, Genesee County, for example, gives you the population, but it has these traditional living, for example, type of dominant tapestry segment. And with that, they have kind of, what does that mean in PDFs associated with that data. So it's you have to have an Esri subscription within your organization in order to get access to this type of information. But it's very, very interesting. We haven't quite, here at the Office of Economic Development, in the GIS Center, we haven't truly delved into all that's provided with this data, but we have kind of added to some of our maps and some of our access, because we do have access through the university to that data. But I just wanted to show you, because this will give you kind of an idea, a very brief idea of what your consumer might be in an area. If you're looking at a particular region, a particular county, a particular city or subdivision, not subdivision, township, you can kind of get an idea of who lives there very quickly without having to dive too far into the data. Then we have the data from the census website. I'll just briefly look at population And you get a variety of different or data sources that they have, from Decennial to American Community Survey. They have population estimates every single year as well. With the ACS, it'll pop up exactly what you're looking for. You can customize the table to a variety of different levels. So if you say we just wanted it for Genesee County, you can get all the way down there, or Genesee and, for example, Lapeer next door. We just wanted those. We can close it. We get Genesee here, Lapeer here. It automatically gives you age differences, race. So you can get a lot of those data sets right then. You can download it in a variety of different, or you can go right to Excel. There's also the option within this website to map it. So for example, I have here, you can, there's only two right now because I'm looking at the county level, but you can look at smaller geographic regions as opposed to, the track level and a variety of other levels, all levels I talked about earlier, block group, block, if it's decennial, and that sort of thing. With the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have a variety of different data tools that, they have popular series. They have a couple series report where if you want to look at time differences or time series, not just the most recent year, but years prior. You can look at, labor force, unemployment, consumer price index, other different cost indices that they've created. But if you're just looking for Michigan, the best one you might want to look at is the Michigan Bureau of Labor Market Information and Strategic Initiatives, as for the full name. But they have everything kind of already consolidated for Michigan and for our regions that we might be looking in. And so you can look at apprenticeships that are registered, businesses for employers, employment versus unemployment, payroll estimates. So say you're a business that's trying to start out or move into a region, you can get an idea based on your industry what wages are kind of the averages for your business. You kind of understand what are people being paid in that region. And a lot of it's built off of Tableau data sets where you can look at different high level industry codes where we're looking at retail or mining, but then you can also look at 3-digit NAICS codes or 4-digit NAICS codes, where you can look even farther down to get very specific. And it has number of establishments for that. You can look at different areas. If you want to look at the county, MSAs, prosperity regions within the state of Michigan. You can look at the regionally or county level. So you can kind of get a bit better understanding of what is going on already in your county, not even knowing where they're located, but you get a very good sense of what already exists and what's already, how are they getting paid? What's the payroll? So you can kind of get the estimates to start with, especially if you're looking for loans. You can kind of say, okay, this is what's already happening in this region. I have the funds, or what funds will I need to get kind of an initial investment, for example. We have the BDS. It's also kind of built in a very similar dashboard type manner. Again, for the whole, United States, where we can look at the state level, we can look at county level data. We can look at, by year, by county, what the firm age is. So looking at bar graph, we look at line or tables, for example. Let's see. Michigan, Tennessee. So what type of job creations happened throughout the past, and how many jobs are being created each year, for example. You can look at employment. So this is all from the BDS data, or the business dynamics statistics. Then when I talked about the LEHD data, we have on the map, which on the map we can look for a specific area. Oh no, not that one. Wrong one. I forget there's a Genesee County in New York as well. So you perform an analysis for that Genesee, you can look at kind of a labor market segment. You can look at a variety of different income earners, what industries, age groups. For all those, you can look at all the way back to 2002. And so we've actually started mapping a lot of the inflow outflow data. So for example, I'll do that. All jobs. We started mapping this across our region to understand how many people are coming in, how many people are going out, and how many people are staying. And we'll be providing that hopefully here shortly. We're just wrapping up some of our mapping and data analysis and data infographic creation sort of thing for our 7-county region within the EDA University Center. But this gives you an idea of, are people mostly staying within the county or within a city? Because you can go by, search by Flint and get the same data within Flint. And they just released this 2019 data very, very recently. I can't remember exactly the date, but it's been within the last month or so that they released 2019 data, but you can go all the way back again to 2002. You can also bring in your own, if you go back to the start, you can bring in your own shape files. So if you have GIS files yourself, you can import your own. So if you have a specific region you're looking at, you're only looking at, maybe a couple different counties, or you're looking at a couple different census blocks or census group tracks or whatever, you can bring those into this site and use that as your region of study, which is a very cool aspect of this site. Stats America, again, I mentioned it, it's housed at Purdue, based off of funding from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, or the EDA. You can look at various county profiles where it automatically kind of gives you a lot of that data right now. They've kind of taken all that data and housed it in one location, and it's a very, very good resource that we've used in the past for quick grant reports or grant applications for even our stuff. And you can look at, again, demographics, you can look at education levels, income and poverty. They have the BLS data also in there, establishments, jobs, average wages, how that ranks across the nation. At the county level, for example, in this, where it compares it to the other 3,000 or 3,300 or so counties that are in the nation. There's also other specialized tools, the regionizer, where you can create your own region, for example, and then get data. So I selected, I think, 3 different counties, and it, again, populates all that data for that region very easily for you. Even commuting, the most recent data they have in there is very similar to that LEHD data that I showed on the map. But it's commuting data about, do they live and work there, or do they, work somewhere else potentially, and where do they come from, or where do they go to, and kind of an idea of what counties they might travel to the most recent, which for Genesee County, they go from that region or whatever region I selected to Oakland County, for example, to work. And then they also have, if you're interested in opportunity zones, they have opportunity zones. They have a distress tool, again, looking at unemployment or poverty, how threshold, what different personal per capita, personal income, that sort of thing, measuring distress in an area. So you kind of get an idea, outside of business even, you can use this tool to help understand your region, which is still economic data, but it might not be specific to a business. And then Social Explorer, again, it uses a lot of ACS data. They use a lot of other survey data on here, not just for the United States, but for a variety of others, including population estimates, where you kind of just zoom in. You can change what you're looking at, population, and then change what level, state, county level, whatever it might be. A variety of other election data. Again, like I mentioned before, they have those longitudinal employer household dynamic data also mapped already. Religion data, health data, cancer data, other environmental data. Just another resource to get access to these data readily, free to use, You can't, some places it's tough to download them specifically, but you can at least get, especially if you're looking for a specific one area, you can kind of just write them down in a spreadsheet yourself or that sort of thing. And then the site selector tool, you can find properties. For example, you can get a community profile, you can map businesses, you can get, again, these estimates for age distribution, educational attainment, what the labor force is like, unemployment, what are the top jobs in that area. And a lot of this is you can download, you can compare, you can map the demographic data, consumer, a variety of different data sources that I won't get into now. But again, it's free and available through the state to use. It's a free resource. Now, for a not so free resource, in terms of stuff that we've done, we've helped people in our region do this type of market analysis before. I just kind of have a variety. I just threw some pharmacies up that were a free app. This is through ArcGIS Online's Business Analyst. It's a, if you have to get an online subscription, you have to pay a little extra even for this app access. But through the university, because we use Esri to teach a lot of our students within our GIS certificate program, I figured this kind of be an idea that you can kind of get an idea of how you might think about it, how might you frame adding or looking for your business or working with other clients or whatever it might be. And so we can create kind of a smart map search to understand for pharmacies, if say we wanted to start a pharmacy somewhere. And we can, this allows us to look at a variety of different variables, I think up to 5 for this particular one. So for example, Esri has a lot of different population data that they just have themselves. So I'm gonna add population density. We'll go back to categories. I'll look at maybe age. If it's a pharmacy, you wanna know, let's see, go back. You can create your own age variable. So for example, if I wanna just look at 60 and over, both sexes, to understand, okay, maybe an older population that might need a pharmacy more often. You can add that. You can add a percentage or true number. So I'll check that and make it a percentage. There's a variety of health data, health insurance coverage, other health information. So for example, where is it? I'll look at, total spent on drugs and vitamins. And then, let's see, they have other information. We can look at poverty, households below the poverty percentage. This came from the ACS. So not only do they have Esri proprietary data, but they also have ACS information that you could readily download as well. And then I did one other before. And that'll be good for right now. So you can apply that and it'll show, and now we can actually refine our criteria within this, where we can look at population density. Do we want to look at urban areas? Do we want to look at not so urban areas, whatever it might be? Then we can look at, do we want to serve serve lower income families with our pharmacy? Do we want to serve, we want it to be 20% 60 plus? And then kind of a median of what it might, in terms of, so we get a couple access to a couple, we get information on what is available, what's not available, and that sort of thing. And then with all these, you can actually create your own infographic that then kind of gives you a summary of that census tract or that zip code or whatever it might be if you find one that you might look at. So that's just kind of a very quick example of how you would use a GIS to understand, okay, I have these variables I'm looking at. How can I then understand where's the best spot based on my criteria to do that? So with that, I'll go back and I'd like to bring Sue in to kind of give her thoughts briefly as we wrap up. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the question and answer box and we'll save some time right at the end for that. So Sue?
Well, thanks, Troy, and thank you, Nick, too. I just appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel. As you've probably noticed already, the university is an amazing partner and an amazing resource for our community. And, Troy always makes it look so easy. He went through so much data so fast, but they're both available. And I just think for us, again, I'm at the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. Our mission is really to connect generosity to community need. So we have donors that are interested in helping and working with nonprofits to serve whatever the community need that it may be. Also wanted to highlight that Troy and I worked together on the census, and that Troy really helped us map out where we were getting responses or not, so we could have a solid count. So again, just wanted to stress that. And I know Nick is just working and meeting entrepreneurs where they're at, finding some of the data sources, helping with the business plans. So I didn't want to lose sight that they are an amazing resource for the community and always available and responsive. They're amazing to work with. So really, I just, when I first moved to Flint, worked at the CS Mott Foundation and with their microenterprise portfolio. So I've always had an interest in businesses and businesses in our community. Really, they're the key to, quality of life and providing job opportunities and in our community. So I've kept an eye on it. Now, we at the Community Foundation haven't been doing as much work in this space. I know there are so many folks working with entrepreneurs, but in our most recent strategic plan, we said we would like to explore what we might work on in the economic development space. And then with an equity lens, we've really, especially after COVID, have been looking at how can we support our minority businesses. And as you know, there have been grants and resources available, but we're wondering, are we really reaching those businesses? And are we providing them with the services that they need? And I'm actually going to pull Troy and Nick into the conversation. I'm just not going to talk, maybe we can kick it around a little bit, but making sure that based on data, do we know there's a community foundation, our counterpart in Ann Arbor took a look at where they did a heat map of where capital was accessible or not for our entrepreneurs. Or do we have a sense of where our entrepreneurs are located, especially those are minority entrepreneurs? So my team, and when I say I have an idea, or I usually know enough to be dangerous, they usually run the other way. So I'm surprised that Troy and Nick gave me this opportunity. But those are some of the things we're thinking about, right? Again, we're not in this space as in depth as some of you, but thinking from that bigger ecosystem approach of really making sure that we can help our entrepreneurs where they're at, that maybe there's a data, using data in a different way to help and inform that. And I don't know, Nick, the other thought, and then I really will let you guys talk, is that the city of Flint also received a large SBA grant, which will allow for some navigation of helping, businesses. And I know, Nick, the university is a partner, and just thinking through. So what are some of the things that would be helpful, bigger ecosystem wise? And those are just a few ideas I've had, but would be curious to see what Troy and Nick think as well.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. I think for me, just putting a kind of example to it, it's really interesting that we have, throughout the city of Flint, about 9 different community or neighborhood business districts. And we don't often think about those because they're sited right in the heart of neighborhoods. They're where people are at traditionally, but they've really been underinvested in, are often kind of left in a state where they really can't just easily bring in a new business. And so even thinking about investment potential, thinking about how do we make the case for these districts throughout the community that they're still vital, that the populations around them really need those services, or even determining, in the future, kind of who would be the best mix of services to put there for what the community really needs and can afford to sustain, I think are important considerations. And then also, of course, when we talk about meeting people where they're at, that's a huge thing for us. Even just thinking about how do we provide services throughout the community in a way that is equitable, in a way that really touches as many people as possible that truly have that need. I think GIS is, again, a great way to start that process of examining all those different layers that play into some of these historic disparities and play into some of the opportunities we have today to right those wrongs.
That's great. That's a great response. Thank you. Giving me things to think about. Troy, what's your initial responses?
Well, Nick kind of touched on it. It's understanding, especially with those districts, some people might not even know where those are. So if you're not only just in Flint, but a lot of communities, there might be those types of, development districts or business districts within a community that no one has any idea exist, and that people are trying to get businesses to go there. But to be able to throw that on a map and readily makes it easy for people to go, oh, I know where that is. I've been there, but I didn't realize that this type of program was going on or this type of incentive was going on in that particular location. Because I'm just thinking, like you mentioned, Sue, in our census project, a lot of people didn't know where those events, now granted, the pandemic threw a lot of big wrench into a lot of the events, but knowing where those resources are located at, just for that part, and stuff that we're doing here at in the Office of Economic Development with My Start Smart, Nick, if once we get that going and start mapping those services that, hey, these services do exist, and getting that word out to the people where they're at. They don't have to travel that far. They don't have to think about, even if they're outside in rural areas of Genesee County or Lapeer County or Shiawassee County, or in Michigan in general. They don't have to travel that far. They don't have to go to Detroit. They don't have to go to Grand Rapids or Flint or go to the big towns. It's in this. Those services do exist in smaller communities as well. That be able to put that, use GIS to let them know those exist can provide a huge aspect of it as well.
And just to kind of put a finer tooth comb to that statement, if you're not familiar with our My Start Smart or MI Start Smart, it is an online resource platform. And really what it does is it kind of integrates all the service and information that we have regarding entrepreneurial resources throughout Genesee County, as well as the 7-county region, and we're expanding it statewide currently, and kind of puts all these factors together to produce a report or an easily accessible data source for individual entrepreneurs and businesses. And so again, it's everything, especially early stage. It's the counseling services, incubators, commercial kitchens. It's just working with even the local government systems and permitting and regulations. All this information we try to provide easily accessible at the fingertips for entrepreneurs to, again, provide them kind of that starting point much further ahead than most others do. And so, again, even just thinking about how do we democratize information? How do we find ways to give people an advantage so that they can say, here's an opportunity that's been overlooked in the community, and they don't need high-level professionals to give them that starting place.
Yeah, I just, again, would just like to underscore, I don't know that you both needed any ideas because you're doing such great work already. But I would say, so again, just use it, such a resource, such an amazing resource that I think is maybe not known for our community, and stay tuned. We have some thoughts now. I look forward to working with both of you moving forward on some of these ideas, because we too are really in we have a long-standing neighborhood investment program, right? And this also, carries over into the placemaking conversation you're having later this afternoon. It's just a key part of, strengthening our community. So I just look forward to kind of continuing this conversation with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue, for giving your thoughts, and I appreciate your taking the time out of your day to join us today.
No problem. Anytime.
We haven't had any questions so far, but I'd like to open it up if you'd like to throw something in the Q&A or chat for a few minutes. And while you're typing that out or thinking about that, a reminder, we do have the placemaking that Sue just mentioned this afternoon, the leveraging GIS and data and placemaking webinar this afternoon with Joe Schapani from the Flint Public Art Project, Christina Irwin, who's from the city of Grand Blanc, Assistant City Manager, and Damon Ross, who works with Sue at the Community Foundation, where he works a lot with that neighborhood small grants program. And so that they can, he's out in the community doing that placemaking sort of thing. And if you ever have a question for me or understanding where you can get these GIS services, please just reach out to me. Use my email to work myself or work with Nick, and we kind of go by case by case basis in terms of potential costs involved and how big a project it might be and that sort of thing. But we're always available. Sue mentioned it. Me and Nick are always available to try to help out as best we can. Again, it might just be pointing to one of the sources or resources that I mentioned today, and understanding, hey, where can you find that data? So that, that sort of thing. But a couple questions did come in. For nonprofit organizations, how do you get buy-in from decision makers to either hire GIS professional or contract out specific projects? And I don't know if you guys have anything to ask that. Yeah, from my experience with people, showing them, even if it's a small project or a small aspect, even maybe showing the brief demonstration I did today, or another brief demonstration you might be able to find out there. That'd probably be the best way that I've got gained traction with different community groups, just in general, not only just from business perspective, but just in general perspective of how GIS can provide use. And it's mostly just showing them a sample and showing them something that has been done that's similar to what they're trying to do. I don't know if Nick or Sue, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that, it's such an important piece to say I have a bespoke map, that I have something that is really dialed into the exact layers and the information source that we're trying to show. I think we can easily do free resources and be very general in our approach, but that investment is well worth it. And an organization that's able to really have exactly the information and exactly the intersections that they need is probably going to be more successful, whether it's on the ask or on the actual programmatic side.
And then I would just add in, as Nick showed, and it can be part of showing that you have a strong business plan and that the numbers, whatever you're coming up with, the revenue and expenses will be, I was going to say, tighter, or, you'll know that you'll be able to make a strong case for it because you have it based in data. So, I do think the examples, being able to talk through the examples, sharing what you maybe have is available publicly, but to be truly effective and to really make a stronger argument or case, whether it's business, nonprofit, I think that's where you could get that, talk about the added value of the effectiveness that GISD data would give you.
And then the second question was just a quick question about the data. And for the most part, a lot of that data from the state, BLS data or the MILMI data is at the county level for the most part. It's just unfortunate. And I think it's mostly just due to, once you get to a smaller scale, it's tough to understand truly what's going on a census tract level data. For the most part, the census level data is the only data that gets down to that block group and even block level. And again, even with those, there are margins of error associated. So you can only get somewhat of a sense of what's going on, especially when you're looking at population type data. I always personally use percentages when dealing with block level or block group level data and that sort of thing. So yeah, so hopefully that answers your question as opposed with that. So thank you all for joining us today. That's noon. Thank you, Sue, again, and thank you, Nick, for participating this morning. And again, we have that webinar coming up this afternoon. Quick reminder that survey will be coming out later today. So please fill that out. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you.